Okay, welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm so excited to have a guest, Tara DuPont, on here with us. And she is joining us because she grew up, I believe. We haven't chatted too much because I've learned that lesson. She's grown up in Hawaii, but now lives in New Zealand, and she's here to tell her story. And we're really here to really what? Find out, is the islands really different? Can you go from one island to another island, and is it different or is it the same? I feel like that's always a question because when I talk to other Americans, they're like, I'll just move to Hawaii, and I'm just like, Hawaii is still America. So we'll find out. So anyway, welcome, Tara. Glad to have
Thank
you.
you. So
And
good
it's
to
so
be here.
fun. The same name, Tara,
Tara with Tara.
Tara for all you New Zealanders out there. Do you get called Tara in New Zealand? Because
I get called Tara,
oh,
which
thank
I
you.
a lot of people in New Zealand look at me like I don't know how to pronounce my own name, so that's
Hey,
always interesting
yes,
when you're meeting people.
yes. Holy cow. I'm loving this already. This is I mean, I literally, when I used to introduce myself when I first came in, it maybe my accent is probably different than yours, is they thought I was saying like terrorist.
Yeah. Oh, I get Tara or sometimes on the phone Karen. Not a Karen. Not a Karen.
It's literally the worst name to be called.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are you joining us from? Like, where in New Zealand are you?
Yep. So I live in Whangarei, which is about 2.5 hours north of Auckland. It's about another, I don't know, 3.5 to 4 to the very top of the North Island. So yeah, on the kind of almost the northernmost part of North Island.
Hey, that's where you live? Like, I feel like I have some friends there that run like a theater there.
Oh,
And they're from New
interesting.
York City. Yes, it's
Oh,
not like that's a big place.
no,
They've
very
invited me
small.
up so many times and I never made it, but okay. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
look into that. Okay. So we're just gonna hear your story. I'm just gonna ask you some like basic questions. Okay, so how long have you been there? And maybe like what brought you there? And like, did you grow up in Hawaii? I think I got that right.
Yep. Yep, yep. So I'll go way back and I will try to keep it concise. So I grew up in
That's fine.
Hawaii. I
Okay.
am Hawaiian. We heard a lot in Hawaii about New Zealand, Aotearoa growing up because Maori are basically brother sister cultures to Hawaiians. We're both Polynesian, so we have
Right.
very similar cultural ties, language, all of that. So I'd always heard about New Zealand my whole life. I think the thing about growing up in Hawaii is you're sort of in the middle of the Pacific. So you hear about and get a lot of visitors from Japan, the West Coast. I ended up going to University of Oregon.
Mm.
And that's when, after 2.5 years, I could not take the rain anymore and
Oh,
did not.
yes.
I was not built for rain. When you grow up in Hawaii and it is like the summer all the time, it's a
Mm.
really difficult transition. So, at
Like,
the
did
end
you
of my
get
second.
sad? Did you get like that rain,
Yes,
like depression that they
yes,
talk about? Okay.
yes, it's too much, and I've learned that when you grow up in that environment in the
Mm.
Pacific Northwest, it's very normal to you, and you tend to not get seasonal depression, but for the
Right,
rest of us,
right.
it's a real
Interesting.
shock to the
Okay.
system. Yeah, so about, the end of my second year, it was like, "I don't know that I can do this," but I didn't necessarily wanna go home. There wasn't any school in California that I was really familiar with and thought,
Mm,
"Well, I'll transfer there."
sure.
So, long story short, go to my counselor at the end of the year just to check in, academic annual check-in.
Yep.
They said, "Okay, we need to rattle off the list of study abroads because it's just standard." Okay. So there's one in Copenhagen. I'm like, "Yeah, no, that's not happening." Sounds like a beautiful place, but rain to rain, no.
No,
And then they said,
totally.
"We've got this girl in New Zealand who's kind of put together her own study abroad." And it was like the record stopped, like, I was like,
Really?
"Uh, who, New, New Zealand? Oh, okay." And literally, Tara, I tell you, I walked out of that room 15 minutes later and I was like, "That's what I'm doing next year. I'm going to New Zealand." It was like the moment that professor
Mm.
said you could go to New Zealand, it was just like, that's it. And I went home and I called my grandparents and I said, "Guess what I'm doing next year? I'm going to New Zealand." They're like, "Okay, sure, sure."
It's a lot farther.
Yeah. And then the crazy thing was I actually went. So I went back to Oregon for that fall semester
Okay.
because, school calendar is different in New Zealand.
Oh, that's
And
true.
then, yeah, went home for Christmas, and then I was in New Zealand in February, and this was literally, I think, a month before Lord of the Rings came out. So when I'm talking to people about, coming to New Zealand, because now it's a very popular place for Americans to go to,
Oh
I
my
usually
gosh.
say, "That was, like, before Lord of the Rings came out." Like, I've been loving New
Very
Zealand
significant
since.
point. Yes.
Yeah, long time. So 2002. After that, study abroad, came back and forth many times. Did
What were
not
you
feel a
studying?
connection. Oh, landscape architecture.
Okay.
Odd, right?
No, love it.
So there is a program at Lincoln University, down in Christchurch, and actually this is a good, point to bring up. My first interaction with New Zealand was Christchurch, so that rural farming lifestyle, and I just loved it. I was so amazed. Growing up in Hawaii, it's very difficult to go anywhere and not see people. You're around
Right.
people all the time. It's such a small place, and so it was just so amazing to me to be able to go somewhere and not see anyone, and it's just a beautiful landscape. It
100%.
was
That was one
just.
of our first comments as well. Like, you could go to an actual deserted beach or an actual, on a hike and not see anybody. It
Yeah.
was so nice.
Yeah, it felt so freeing in a way. Um, so yeah, I never really felt a connection with being on the US mainland. Moved back to Hawaii after school, and then was there until 2018. And I'd never really wanted to have children. I was always sort of child free by choice, and my brain sort of thought long and hard about that in 2018. I was 36 at the time, and it was like, okay, am I
Mm,
really not going
yeah,
to do the kid thing? And after a couple months, it was like, no, I don't feel like that path is for me. And then the next question was, okay, it's been 17 years or something by that point that
right,
you've been thinking about moving to New Zealand. Are you going to give this a try or are you not? And I didn't want to have any regrets. So I thought,
right.
okay, I'm going to try to do this. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, this is never going to happen. Like, I'm never
Yeah.
going to get a work visa. Like, I'm just going through the motions to say,
Holy
I tried.
cow, yes. You are communicating that so well, because when we got our visa, we all sat there like, "Wait, what?" Because the whole time you're thinking, "This is not really happening. Because it's like your protective nature to be like,
Yeah.
to not be disappointed, to just be like, you know,
Yeah.
"Look at this," and it also feels really big and scary and blah, 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 and that's just more comfortable to be like, "Well,
Yeah.
we're just gonna try it, and we're probably not gonna get in, we're probably not gonna get a job," and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and
do
at
the
the
part.
same time, I'm a Virgo, and I'm
Yeah,
persistent, so it kind of felt weird that I hadn't really tried before then. The other thing I do
yeah,
wanna quickly talk about
sure.
is, being a single woman in now getting into your late 30s in Hawaii, and Hawaii is a very expensive place to
It is.
live. I
Yes.
mean, it is up there with New York City and San Francisco and LA, rent and home prices. And I didn't have a safety net. I felt
Mm,
like I was a critical illness away from bankruptcy, which, I'm taking a very serious turn here, but it's something you think about when you don't have a second income.
yep, totally.
And your healthcare is through your job. And
Okay.
so it's just a whole lot of what ifs. And at the time, I had bought a house on the Big Island, which
Mm,
is one of the neighbor islands. I'd grown up on Oahu, which is the main island with Honolulu and Waikiki. I was able
right.
to work remotely for a firm in Honolulu. So this is before COVID. I was doing the remote work thing, which
Yeah.
is great. And living more rurally in Hawaii gave me that boost of confidence to say, yeah, I could, I think I could do the New Zealand thing.
Yes.
Let's try it. Yeah, so there's a whole process with how I went about
Mm.
finding a job, and we can talk about that now or talk about something else.
Yeah,
You
no,
want me to
that's
know?
great. I mean, finding a job, like, so you moved there in what year?
2019
2019.
April.
So
Yeah,
right
it was.
before COVID.
Yeah, yeah. It took me about. I think I guess I'll just launch into my process. It took me about 8 months
Okay.
total to get to New Zealand. So and it's so interesting watching your YouTube video. I'm very much into YouTube at the moment. I don't know where I've been my whole life, but now I'm like watching everything on
Oh my
YouTube.
gosh, isn't that the truth? I
I
barely watched it. People are like, "You should be on video or on YouTube." I'm like, "I don't even use YouTube. I don't know what you're
I
saying."
know. And now I watch news, I watch live
Right.
streams, yeah, I watch bootleg, shows from the US. I'm
Totally.
all over
We all
YouTube.
do that. Yes.
Yeah, and it's so crazy finding your videos and videos of other folks who sort of been through the same. It's like, "Oh, I did not know this existed when I was trying to do this in
Mm,
2018." My process was in a vacuum by myself. So, here's what I did. So, by this point, I've transitioned from landscape architecture into urban planning.
very nice.
I've been working for firms back in Hawaii who, oddly enough, did a lot of military master planning work, which is very sort of niche.
Right.
And so I didn't know how that was going to translate, but I was determined to find firms who would recognize that experience. So my first step was, okay, I'm going to go look up all of the planning firms in New Zealand. I went to the New Zealand Planning Institute website. They had a list, maybe a little more than 100 firms, very small, sort of one man
Mm,
shops to big corporates that had a presence in New Zealand. And I literally went through the list and looked at websites. I devoted like every Saturday for, I don't know, maybe a good 2 to 3 months to going through every website. Yes. I'm
really?
persistent. When you want something, you try, right?
Oh,
I'm
it's
not
so
chasing kids on
that's
a
such a good
Saturday, so
idea. That's so what you should do. Are you like then are you finding like the right contacts and then reaching out to them or
yeah, so I will get there. So I'm looking through these different, different firms. I whittle it down from a little more than 100 to about a dozen that I think will recognize my experience.
Okay.
And then I start hunting for the HR folks on
Yeah.
LinkedIn
On
because
LinkedIn,
remember,
exactly.
yes, so nowadays when you go to a company website, it's like the only way you can contact someone is if you apply for a job. But
Correct.
I was not ready to apply for a job and I didn't want to fill out some kind of fake
Totally.
application and send the wrong message. So I go on on a spree on LinkedIn. So I'm, typing in the name of the firm and like HR or something to
Yep.
try to find people. That was not easy, but I was able to find, I think, at least one person at each firm. There were a couple of smaller firms that I was able to just email directly,
Mm,
but there were probably 8 or so that I really had to, go hunting for people. And I just sent them a very quick message that, of course, I tailored, just focus and let, how am I going to get my point across in 3 sentences? And I think it was something to the effect of, Tara, I'm an urban planner in Hawaii. I've been thinking about moving to New Zealand for years, and I'm coming on a trip. That's another part. So I was planning to come on a trip. I think we're in sort of September, October at this point. In November,
mhm.
I would love it if I could have a quick coffee with one of your sort of senior urban planners or something. So I kept it quick. I said, I'm coming on this trip. This trip is specifically to try to meet with firms, and it'd be great if I could have a quick chat, keep it very sort of
Right, casual, which is very New Zealand.
casual.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. Um, and so I got responses, went on the
Yeah.
trip. I think I had meetings with 4 different firms set up. One firm I had 7 or 8 meetings. This was all in Auckland. I wanted to live in Auckland. Wellington is too cold for
Yeah,
me.
it would be. It would be too cold for you. Totally.
And so I had those meetings. I went back home. There were 2 firms that were really interested. I scrambled to put a portfolio together, which is pretty typical in the design
Of
industry.
course.
I
Yeah.
laid it out, made it real professional. I just wanted to knock it out of the park.
Right.
So I worked nights for probably the next 2 weeks to just try to pull this whole thing together. Sent it off. And in January, oddly enough, I'd gone to Japan on a work trip and I'm driving around with one of our clients one day. It's about lunchtime. They get out of the car. I go to check my email and I see in my Gmail offer of employment and my heart. sunk. I mean, not in a bad way, but it just dropped into the bottom of my stomach, and I was just sort of going, "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Really? Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my gosh."
100%.
Yeah,
That's the
and that's what
feeling.
happened. Yeah, and I got back in touch with the other firm, and they said, "We really, really like you. We just don't have, an opening at this
Got
point.
it.
So take that offer. Take that offer." And I said, "Okay." And so
Oh my goodness.
that's the story. That's me sort of cobbling together my own process, which anyone can do. We all have access to
Which
websites,
anybody can do,
LinkedIn.
and it's okay,
Anyone
can
can
I
do.
just say, okay, Tara is now the poster child of doing this, okay? Because what you just explained is 100% what me and Paul from he's my immigration partner, constantly are explaining to people. Like, this is exactly how you need to do it. You do not
Yeah.
you
And it
never and you just inherently knew this, I don't know, but, like, don't just put your CV into a job. Don't just
yes.
apply, and that's like the worst thing you can do, especially when it comes to New Zealand where there's only a limited number of jobs. It's not a
Yep.
big place. So like if
Yep.
you've already like done this and then like, oh, I didn't realize I needed to prove that I could have a visa before I then applied for the job, which is generally what we teach people. But
Yes.
you know, if you do it your route, I mean, brilliant. You took 100, you brought, to 12, to like ones that you think your qualifications match up because that's key, right? Because it's a
Yep.
big leap for them. You know,
Yep.
you're not there and they have to, like, are you serious? And, I think that you went to school there and, you're willing to come and have a coffee with them. And that's exactly what we tell people to do because you just sit down and have a coffee with them. Don't ask
Yep.
for too much. Don't be
Yep.
American, you know,
Yeah.
don't be
If you think
pushy.
you wanna come, take the trip. Spend the
Take
few
the trip.
$1,000s to make the trip and say, I'm showing up in a month and this is what I wanna do." I mean, there's so many people that wanna move to New Zealand, but are you really gonna do it? Are you really? I mean, think about, I'm sure these HR folks are getting bombarded with random, sort of kind of flippant requests. It's hard to take people seriously when everyone wants to move to New Zealand. If you really wanna do it, you gotta show up.
For 100, yes, exactly. Like, I was just talking to someone before I came on here, and this girl's like, "I've been applying to all these jobs." I'm like, "Stop." You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like, until you
mhm.
can prove to the employer that you can actually get a visa to move there,
Yes.
it's probably they're like, what they're just throwing it away. They're
Gotta
not
make
wasting
it
their time.
you
Yeah,
gotta make it personal, and I think the other
gotta make
thing
it
I will
personal.
say, I'm not a civil engineer, I'm not an engineer, but I work with them all the time, and I believe they're still on the green list as one of those
They are, yes.
desirable occupations, and my experience being here, if you have a degree from the US, if you have a few years of work experience in the US, that looks amazing. You're probably a shoo-in, quite honestly.
I
You just
know.
need to take the
Thank you.
steps and then the snowball, everything just
Right.
kept. I just took that one step of, let's look through this list of firms. Maybe there'll be a firm that it
I
just
mean, the
kept
key
going.
is, like, you didn't even apply for the job. You just went and had a coffee with them. I mean, I can't even tell you. That is so the right way to handle a New Zealand employer. It's just I can't
Yeah,
always convince many over here
yeah,
about that, but that is so accurate. And I have some in my community right now who have gone over there, have had the coffees, and still, because their industry isn't on the green list, and so it's a lot
yeah.
harder, and that's you know. So, question. So,
Mhm.
because that you grew up in Hawaii, did they feel that the culture was an easier transition? Because I always got okay, we're a little bit nervous about Americans
Yeah.
coming and like, there's a New Zealand way of doing everything. And are you gonna,
Yes.
embrace
Yeah.
that basically?
Yeah. Um, I think we talked about it in my interviews. In my cover letter, I've got to pull up my cover. I'll send you my cover letter
Yes, please.
if you want to use it as an example for other folks. I tried to figure out the most concise way to say, I came here on a study abroad almost 20 years ago. I've been thinking about this ever since. One of the reasons I really love New Zealand is it reminds me a lot of Hawaii in that it's pretty casual, people are happy go lucky, it's a beautiful place to live, and we're all here sort of appreciating the lifestyle. And I made sure to get that across like at the top so that they would keep reading. And mind you, I'd already met with these folks, but it's like, okay, girl, grab their attention. You have this cover letter. You're fighting for your life. Like, are you doing this? Or are you doing
Seriously.
this?
Like, seriously, you guys, poster child. This is exactly what you do. Like, I help people with their CVs and cover letters. Cover letter, most important, because you have
Yes.
to convince them in those first 2 or 3 lines, why? Why New
Yep.
Zealand? And that is perfect, exactly what you said. Like, I've been dreaming about this, like, people can see themselves, walk themselves right into that mentality and know that, like, "Oh, legitimately, this person wants to be here. This person is here for the long term. This
Yep.
person is
You
serious."
just gotta be a little more strategic than maybe you would trying to get a job in the US. You really gotta figure out how to get people to stop in their tracks and look at what you have to offer. So you gotta grab their
100%.
attention, and I'm not great at marketing or sales, let me tell you that.
Well, it's arguable listening to you. You just when you really want something, you took your time to figure it out. So in the interviews, you didn't have too many cultural questions. It was pretty easy for you to transition. Okay.
Yeah.
So in 2019, you moved. So how has it been?
It's been great. I mean, I will say, well, number 1, let me say, I took 6 weeks off between quitting my job in Hawaii and starting my job here, and those were the best 6 weeks of my life. So, take
100%.
time off. Take time
Thank you.
off.
Thank you for
Take
saying
time
that.
off.
Thank you for saying that. I
Yes.
just had a client who literally flew in 2 days later. She's starting. She has a family with 3 kids. And
Oh
I said,
gosh.
girl, no, no, call them up right now. Say you're starting in three
Yes.
weeks. They're
And
going
they
to be
will
okay.
actually they will respect the
They
fact
will
that you are
respect
moving
that.
to a whole different country, and because they're not as demanding on employees as they are
Yeah,
in the US, we're putting that pressure on ourselves. We're
correct.
saying,
And she
"You
had
show
no
up for
idea that
first
you
up."
could be a different way. She had no
Right.
idea you could be a
They
different way.
gave me a visa, they gave me this offer, I need to you
Right.
can take your time. You can take your time. They
And
will
she was like
respect that.
panicking. And I was like, you don't need to panic. I need you to trust me right now. You need to call them right now because
Yeah,
she's like, I'm fine. I'm like, you're not fine. You no.
yeah,
And so she was like, she's like, what if I lose my job and I just move my whole family? It's like we went into this like panic. And I was like, no,
yeah,
you're gonna trust me. You're gonna call them. And she was so thankful. She says, no
yeah.
problem. I said, no problem. No
And I
worries.
think be
And
vulnerable. Vulnerability works here.
mhm,
Literally tell them, I'm so grateful that you've given me this opportunity. I
right,
feel really pressured to get there as soon as possible, but I really need to take some time. And I can almost 100% guarantee you they will say, "No problem. We get it." I mean,
100%.
you have to remember that there are people immigrating from South Africa to New Zealand, from the Philippines to New Zealand. There are people immigrating here from all over the world, and we all need to take our time to get here. So it's not just you're not the only one.
Right.
You're not the only one.
And you're just asking the question.
Yeah. I will say that moving to another country on your own in your late 30s is not for the faint of heart, you know? It's a lot setting up the bank account, everything that you talk about in your videos, setting up the bank accounts, buying the car, finding a place to live temporarily. I didn't realize so I okay, the here's where I made the mistake, right? I started work 3 days after I moved.
Hmm.
Granted, I had a place to stay with friends, so I had a pretty soft landing that
Yeah.
way. Um, I started on a Wednesday. That's also my recommendation. Never start your first day of work on a Monday. Oh my gosh, no. Give yourself a breather. The
Hmm.
next week I had strep throat, completely lost my voice. I was so in the thick of moving, I didn't realize I was getting sick
Mhm.
until my throat was burning and then I
Mhm.
lost my voice. And that's a little bit sad to get into your second week of work and you're talking like this. And then I have my mom calling me, telling me, just take a few days off. And I'm like, Mom, they
Right.
just gave me a work visa. That's when my Americanness kicked in a
No,
little bit.
I
I'm like,
know.
I
Yes.
get it, but like I'm just gonna show up. And if they send me home, they can
Right.
send me home,
Right.
but this is no, I need to just go with this. Um yeah, so that's kind of how it all started. I had 8 suitcases that yes, I moved through the airport myself. But I got rid of most all of my stuff, but I'm not the type of person that gets really sentimental about things
Yeah.
anyway. That's another thing. Can we just quickly talk about that? I feel like
Yes.
there are a lot of people who want to move to another country, want to move to New Zealand, and then go, "But my stuff, but
Mhm.
all my things." And I'm kind of like, "Well, really? Do you care more about your $2,000 sofa than a whole new life experience?" I
Right.
I
Right,
maybe
are
maybe
you
you're not
saying, like,
ready.
you're gonna consider not going because of your stuff? Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I
you
don't
know,
care. I've sold my stuff 4 times over. I keep
I
thinking I
know.
have a pan that I don't have anymore. Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
how many times have we bought can openers, Tara, right? I
Oh,
mean,
girl, how many times have I bought can openers? And there's so many things in my house right now, well, it's a small apartment, but that
mm,
I don't even can't believe I haven't bought yet.
yeah,
You know, it's like, "Oh, I thought I'm all set up for life, but I don't even have these
yeah.
basic things."
No, you're on to can opener number 4. Here you
Right.
are.
Mhm, mhm. In
Mhm.
fact, my sister-in-law gave me my recent one because I didn't even think about it. You know, and it's just not that important, and that's the point, and you went
Yeah,
with 8 suitcases, and that's exactly what we did, and, yeah, and to just, say, really acknowledge how hard it is to just move and give your time to adjust. Even for me, when I moved back here to the US this summer, I'm thinking it's home, I'm thinking it's easier, was not the hardest move I've done yet, and
mm,
it was also I was working for my New Zealand company as well, and it was too much. It
yeah,
was too much of, like, having to start work at, like, 4 in the morning for me, and then, and then deal with, like, "We're gonna go buy a car, we're gonna go that," and it's like, I'm tired, like, I should probably sleep, but I also don't wanna miss out on doing that, picking it out, these are kinda big deals, everything was a big deal, and I
yeah,
couldn't miss it, and the kids are up and down.
yeah. And it is a big deal, and it is a big change, and it is a big
Yeah,
shift every time, and you will get through it. It is short-term pain
totally.
for long-term gain.
Oh, yeah, it's
I
just
know the
short
feeling
term.
of figuring this out nights and weekends, and I know it, but you will get through it if it's something you really want.
Yes, yes, it's really not that big of a deal, and it's so healthy for you as well. It's so healthy for you to go into a new environment and figure it out and just the brain growth that you have and the having to figure out more new pathways on how to do things and driving on the left side and new grocery stores and all of that learning. Honestly, Tara, I just started a new job and in meetings, and I honestly think that my brain processes things so much faster than everybody. 'Cause I'm
Mm,
so used to taking a new thing
yes.
and figuring it out
Yes.
very quickly where I'm like, it's all these trainees, right? It's not just me, and they're all like
Yes.
these slow I mean, the meeting's like, "I'm gonna gouge my eyes out because"
There
like,
will
"Oh my
be
god."
those first 6 months of translating English to English,
English
like
to
I've heard on
English,
a
thank
lot
you
of
for
your
that
other
reminder.
videos. Yes, the terminology, the jargon we use in the planning and construction and design industry here is
Totally
very
different.
different
Yes,
than in
because I
the
used to own
US.
construction, and I was like, "Oh, what do you call that?" Okay.
Yes. I keep saying baseboards. I'm getting flooring installed in a couple weeks, and they're like, "Baseboards? Baseboards?" I'm like, "Baseboards, they're like skirting." I'm like,
I know.
"Yes, that."
I'm like, what do they call the drywall is
Yeah,
what is it? Jib
gypsum
or
board.
gypsum
Jib.
board? I'm like,
Jib, and I
"Okay."
think they say jib, and I'm like, "Where is jib from?" Yeah,
Or
they take words and go to, like, 3 steps later to an acronym or some kind of other slang, and it's like, "How did we get how did we get there? Oh, okay."
yeah, how did we get
You
there?
just gotta go with it.
Oh my gosh, yes, and so I remember that in construction in particular, well, even in education, I mean, I'm teaching a paper and I'm a tutor and this is weird,
Yeah.
so, but, you figure it out, but you just feel a little bit like ooh, I'm lost, or, like, some of the accents are really strong. Did you know any
Yes.
Coolio before you moved there or familiar with
Um,
speaking it in
I
at
didn't
work?
I wouldn't say I knew any Tereo specifically,
Okay.
but Maori and Hawaiian words are they're usually very similar. So where we would say, an L in Hawaiian, they would say an R here. So aloha goes to aroha.
Right,
Some words are completely different. People say mahi here for
right.
work, and in Hawaii we say hana. So there's some things totally
Yeah,
different.
that's totally different, yeah.
Yeah, some things that are pretty similar. So, yeah, if I do watch something on TV and today, I can usually kind of get the gist of things, but I'm not a fluent Olelo Hawaii speaker, Hawaiian language speaker, and so yeah, just picking up things here and there.
Okay, so how often do you visit home?
Okay, so this is a very interesting segue, and I got to step back a little bit before that to say, 2 years into working here, I was able to basically roll my work visa into permanent residency.
Oh,
I
okay,
was
great.
on the talent accredited employer, so the employer that I got a work offer from is on that
Mm,
accredited employers list. And what I've also learned from your videos is that things are dramatically changing in immigration all the
right.
time. So I don't even know if that's the same
It is, you
process
have to
or
work with an
okay.
accredited employer, yeah.
Yeah. So at the time, and I think it's changed since then, you could work here for 2 years and basically roll that into permanent
Yeah,
residency.
that's how it was for me back in 2015, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which is what I did. By that point, I had met my partner, who's from up here, from Whangarei, which is really funny because I'd been here years and years before in my study abroad and always loved it here. So when we, got in touch with each other, started communicating on an app. We all meet on apps,
We all meet
right?
on apps,
We all meet on apps.
normal, everybody does
Yeah,
that.
exactly. He said,
So
"Oh, I'm
great.
up in Whangarei," and I said, "Oh, I love it there," and he was shocked. So I grew up in Hawaii. I love the beach. Like, I moved to New Zealand to live rurally. I always wanted the Auckland experience, but I did not move to New Zealand to do the Auckland
100%, and that's
thing.
so common, yes. That's the
Yeah,
one
so
thing.
I was able to roll it into, permanent resident visa. I was gonna move up here. I thought I needed to quit my job. This is at a
Mm,
big sort of corporate engineering firm. I thought I needed to quit my job in order to be able to move up here. Now we're in sort of April 2021. You know what? Let me pause and say also, completing immigration paperwork on your own is not for the faint of heart. I
no,
completed my paperwork incorrectly the first time, and I
mm,
was in tears, Tara. I was in
mm,
tears because I was so ready to just have a change. And I just felt like I was on the precipice of, oh, and then I get permanent residency, and now I can buy property and I can change my job, and I have all that freedom. I couldn't fill out paperwork. Like, I have a master's degree. I don't think I'm the smartest tool in the toolbox is not even the phrase. I couldn't believe I filled it out incorrectly, and that made me think, "How is anyone filling this out
mhm.
correctly?" All of these people trying anyway, get yourself an immigration lawyer. If you're
Oh, I
freaking
know,
out, it's
right.
worth it. The paperwork seems simple. They have different terminology for different things. You don't feel like their questions are specific enough, and you don't wanna get it.
It's
It's a
so
lot.
true. You just don't know what you don't know. You think you're reading it right, because in your understanding, that's how you would read that, but it's not. Totally, I
Yeah,
understand.
no, it's so wild. So I got the permanent residency and tried to quit my job a week later. And in that conversation with my manager, she said, "Well, you're really enjoying this project that you're working on. Do you want to just stay on and work as a casual employee?" I was like, "What?" So a casual employee is basically like, you're still employed with the company, but you're hourly. You're not going to be guaranteed a certain amount of hours. Yeah. I was sort of guaranteed about 30 or so with this project that was slated to go for another 2 years. And
Mm.
so I
Oh,
said,
nice.
okay, because I really liked the project I was on.
Yeah.
And so I moved up to Whangarei. I worked remotely. I kept going with that casual work. And then what happened, just about the time that work was waning. Now, mind you, being a casual employee with them did not preclude me from doing contracting work in most cases.
Oh,
Um, yes.
oh, nice. That's a
Yeah. Like there weren't it I mean, there at a certain point there will be a conflict of interest,
yeah, that's
but
true.
Yeah, what I was finding was there wasn't a conflict of interest. So I was doing little stuff on the side. What happened was this is another thing about COVID. I was here for all of COVID. I could not go home for 2.5 years. I really started going crazy at
Mm,
the end of it because I'd never been away from Hawaii for more than 6 months.
mhm,
And it was just like, I don't know if you've heard this from other people, but I sort of started putting friends and family, it was like out of sight, out of mind. I
mhm,
almost didn't want to think about it because I couldn't see them anyway. I couldn't leave anyway. There was a weird brain thing that maybe some of us were doing during COVID.
mm.
That's a long way of saying it did not occur to me to try to contract back to a firm in the US.
Oh,
So, yeah, because
that's
you're a
what you
permanent
should do.
resident. This this is this is this needs to go on the on the description
Yes.
of this video because this is a huge point I think I'm about to make, and one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you today and share this with
Mm,
folks. So, one day I was thinking, I used to be active with the Hawaii chapter of the American Planning Association, our big sort of professional organization for urban planners. And I was still getting the emails. And then it was like, they'd started to do webinars. That's what everyone was doing because of COVID. And I thought, why don't I re-engage? Like, why am I not planning is such a place-based profession
right.
as well that there's still I grew up in Hawaii. I know so much about how everything operates. It's just natural to want to do planning work back in Hawaii if I had the option to. So
Mm,
I just joined the webinars, just trying to just feel like I'm home. And then in the chat, I get a message from a woman who I'd never actually worked with, but we'd been on a committee
mm,
before together. And she said, "Hey, are you in Hawaii?" No, and I'm typing in the chat while this webinar is going on. No, I'm not. And she said, "Oh, I just looked at your LinkedIn and you said that you're doing contracting. Have you ever thought about contracting back to firms in Hawaii?" And this is another record like, wait, what? I had never thought about this. I'd
yes.
never thought about this. And here's another important point, right? Don't burn bridges when you leave employers. Don't burn bridges.
Girl, thank
Don't
you.
burn bridges
I feel like I've
ever.
said this 1,000 times. Yes. Do not, do not. It
Do
is a
not burn
small place. It
bridges.
will come back and bite you. I have story after
Yeah.
story. Go ahead.
Yes. And so I started doing a little work for them while I was still doing, my other New Zealand work down here. That was starting to slow down. I ended up going on a trip back home. And what happened in another webinar I joined after that was one of my old bosses who I worked at that firm for about 5 years messaged me, "Tara, are you in Hawaii?" I said, "No, Tom, but I'm actually going to be home in a couple months. Do you want to do a coffee?" And I'd known at that point they were sort of stepping back from the business. They were at
Mm,
retirement age.
mm,
So I meet with him for a coffee and we have this great conversation. And I said, "Yeah, Tom, I'm doing some work with, this firm, would you be interested in hiring me sort of just to appear as an employee with your firm,
right.
basically? Not I'm not trying to sell him my work or my expertise as a separate sort of subcontractor, but you can sort of fill the void with their own staffing." And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Now remind me, was one of the reasons or was the big reason you left our firm that we wouldn't let you work remote at the time?" This was 2015. And I said, "Yeah." And now we're all working remote. And him and the rest of the senior leadership team loved working from home. They loved it at that point. So it was like that world that had all changed for them. That made that whole remote working
Right.
thing
A reality so
a
quickly. It
reality.
just solved that problem that we all
Yes.
had.
Yes. So it was about maybe 6 months or so before I was able to get on a project with them. And now that's been sort of my bread and butter
Really?
work the
And you're
past.
making
Yes.
USD? USD? Are you? Okay.
And you
It's
know
like
how the
double. It's like
exchange rate
almost
is right
double.
now.
No, I know. Girl, I know. I have so much money in New Zealand, so it's painful for me. I'm like not pulling
Yeah.
it out. I'm gonna lose half of it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. So
so good.
So the accounting is also not for the faint of heart. I have a consulting business set up here. I had to set up a foreign LLC in Hawaii. I have an accountant here. If anyone wants his contact, I'll give it to you. I have an accountant here in Auckland who is an American married to a Kiwi. He's been here 10 something years or so. He does
Great.
US taxes for expats in our situation. And then I have a local accountant here that does my New Zealand taxes. And it's a little bit spendy, but when you're getting paid in US dollars, especially when New Zealand is in a recession and a lot of civil engineers in this moment, this will change, but in this moment are getting laid off. I mean, I cannot tell you how grateful I am. So that whole safety net I felt like I didn't have in Hawaii, I have here.
You have here.
We have the universal health
You have
care. I
healthcare.
can be self-employed,
Right.
right? I'm getting paid the US dollars. I also just think, and I've heard other people talk to you about this and on other people's videos, I would say when you look at the exchange rate between US dollars and New Zealand dollars, you're going to be shocked at the salary that you would make in New Zealand when you convert it to US dollars will look shocking to you.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's the New Zealand salary relative to the cost of living in New Zealand. And for me in Hawaii, where our wages are historically really, really low and our cost of living really, really high, you have this huge gap you're trying to
Right.
fill every time. The gap here between your salary and your quality of life, cost of living to me was a lot smaller
So
than
it's a lot. That's really good to
yeah,
say because
Hawaii.
I feel like I kind of have these arguments all the time because they're like,
Yes.
it's so expensive here. And I would not argue that it's not expensive in New Zealand, but it's not so significantly more. Like I'm living in the
Yes.
Midwest and it's expensive. And then
Yeah.
plus when you pay for healthcare and you pay for so much insurances that are required and it's
Yeah.
it's
And even
terrible.
if even if this New Zealand move is temporary and you wanna move back to the US
Yep.
in 10 years or whatever, there's a good possibility that in those 10 years of living and working here, you may be able to save up more money, even in US dollars, than you were in the
Oh,
US.
see, that's my point is that your your income that you're able to spend every month, disposable income, that's the word I'm looking for. Your disposable income has always been higher living in New Zealand,
Yeah,
even if with equal amounts of money. When I worked in the US and then I worked there, same amount of money, disposable income was more because your tax rate is
yeah,
just slightly lower, the healthcare costs and just sales tax. I mean, just taxed everywhere. In the US, you're
yeah,
just taxed everywhere.
yeah, and you will get used to buying quality over quantity.
You
That's another
will.
thing I hear people talking
Mhm.
about. Now, same note, I miss a Target run.
Oh, girl. I know.
And we haven't even had Target in Hawaii for that long, but every time I go home, oh my gosh, I walk into a Target and I just bliss out for a good hour and a half. And I have to do it by myself because I'm going to go in circles.
No,
So I don't want a friend with me. I do
no.
it by myself. That's this is how I got in this whole tangent because I'm working back with my old firm in Hawaii and have had a lot of project work back in Hawaii and Guam, the military planning thing again.
Mm.
I was able to go home 7 times last year, paid for
Paid
by
for?
the projects
Yeah,
because it's project work.
no.
And then I tack on an extra week or 2 weeks, hang out
Yes,
with
you
friends or
do.
family, work
Yes,
in
you
the
do because you've
office.
learned how to relax in New Zealand and that you could do that. Yes, you do that. Okay.
Yes. I mean, is it not the best setup
It's like
ever?
the
This is why
best
I wanted
setup
to talk
ever.
to you and all these people who watch your videos because I'm like, "You guys, I feel like I crack the code without intentionally going out and trying to crack the code."
No,
It's
and you know what? And this is the point. The point of what you just said in a summary, and this is what I have been preaching for so long, is that you have to take the leap. And I've never had a bad experience yet. I don't know. I'm sure people have had bad experiences. I've had hundreds and hundreds of clients, no bad experiences yet.
yeah,
Figuring it out, have an amazing situation. I'm afraid to lose my job. I'm holding on to it. I'm afraid of quitting. I'm afraid of doing this. Every single time my husband got a different job was better every single time. Even got the same job when we moved back here. Now he's working at a company, best job of his life, he would say. you just gotta stop living in this, like, world where what you have right now is everything, and that if you have a
Mhm.
desire to do something amazing, that you need to do it. You need to
Yeah,
hear us today, you need to do it because you don't wanna
yeah,
be 90 and regret that you didn't.
and if you don't like it, you
You can go
just move
home.
back.
Right, but that's also growth, learning what you don't like. You know what I mean? You won't have any
Yes,
regrets. I went and I tried it,
yes.
and it
The
wasn't for
fact that
me.
we do not have a Whole Foods or a Whole Foods hot bar, which I miss dearly, may make you nuts.
Okay,
We
I've
don't
not
have
been to
Trader
Whole
Joe's,
Foods.
that may
Now
make
I
you
need to
nuts.
go. I go to Trader Joe's all the time. I live at Trader Joe's, but I
Oh
have
my
not been to Whole Foods. Now I need to go. What are you talking about? Whole Foods hot bar. Okay,
Oh
that's
my
amazing.
gosh. You
Oh,
know, like, you just if it doesn't work out, you just move back, you guys.
it's really not
It's
a big
gonna
deal, and
be
you just
okay.
weeded through all your crap, and you don't have all this stuff that you're living with. And you
Yep.
just start again, and, I've helped so many people do this, and I have one that ended up moving back. But I
Mm.
also, as a caveat, told her, "Probably don't go, I don't think it's for you."
Yeah.
I was honest.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
Not for everyone.
It's 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 not, but I think there are definitely those like-minded folks who would really love life in New Zealand, and I think you have to think it through, you have to take a trip, I would not come here sight unseen. I know other people have done it. I don't think it's a big mistake, coming
No.
here sight
Like,
unseen, but
we
why
did,
not?
be we didn't see it before we came, but we also had 6 of us. It's a
Yeah,
different world.
it's a
Right.
whole different
It's a
world.
whole different world. I would have
Yeah,
100% if it was just me or just me and my husband or whatever. So,
yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you that you're there, made this work, and, like, exponentially better than the situation where you're
Yeah,
like, "This fear, and I'm not gonna do this," and then you did, and now look at
yeah.
you.
In so many ways, and now I live rurally, so we're about 20 minutes outside of Whangarei on a little less than an acre, and I never would have been able
Oh my
to buy
god,
that in
I
Hawaii,
love
so I
it.
get to live that little rural dream. I mean, we went to Japan in November. I've been to Japan a lot before with work stuff again. I get my Tokyo fix, you know?
Oh, I'm dying to go to Tokyo. Number 1 on my list. Number 1, I'm dying to go to Tokyo. Okay, now I'm
Yeah,
encouraged.
it's so good. So I get my fixes. I mean, we drive down to Auckland for a day or a night or a
Mhm.
weekend, go to all the restaurants. I mean, we don't have a ton of stuff up here in Whangarei, but we didn't when I was living more rurally in Hawaii
Right,
too.
right.
And I just cooked a bunch of meals at home and you figure it out. If you want that rural life, it's amazing here. And, I will say politically, it's for me personally, I am enjoying being here right now.
Yes, no, totally. Yeah, and that's a lot of people. I mean, I had a flood of people when Trump was elected, and it was like,
I
"Okay,
bet.
interesting." Yeah, and that's the point, is like, you don't need to live somewhere where your values don't line up, or if this isn't the
Yeah.
situation, this work-life balance, or worried about your kids getting shot at school. If this isn't for you, you know what? You're an adult and you actually have a choice, and you don't have to go to New Zealand, but you can move. Like, you can.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard, and so much success and so much growth can happen, and so good for the kids, really. That's been my
Yeah, and
experience
when
too.
you get here,
So,
there's a whole new culture to experience. There's a
mhm.
Kiwi culture, there's a Maori culture. I mean, and I feel like I'm just a steward of this property, being from Hawaii and Hawaiian myself. I there is this feeling of not owning. I don't wanna own a piece of Aotearoa. In my head, I am a steward of it because I am not indigenous
Right.
to Aotearoa. So I think when you come here, immersing yourself in Maori culture and really trying to understand the history is very, very important.
Oh, very important. Very, very important. I could not agree more. Yes, totally. And I just, even with people traveling, I'm working on a product right now for people that are traveling, and it's all cultural based. Like,
Mm,
understanding the culture. Like, what why are you going to a country when you don't understand the culture? Okay. Like,
yeah,
how much more enriching your travel experience is gonna be if you have some, exposure to that,
yeah.
and have an understanding, and you just like, yeah, instead of just going in and like, "I don't understand why you're doing it this way." Okay.
Yeah, And it'll sound funny at first, but you too can roll your R's.
Yes. It will sound funny. You can do it, and
We will
nobody
get there.
sounds worse than me, really. You should have seen me, when I was, like, leading meetings at work and I had to do the karakia, I was like, "Okay, here we go."
Well, I'll tell you something funny. The first few months of working here, every meeting I was in, I'd listen to everyone going around the table. When I would speak, I thought I sounded like a Kardashian with a massive vocal fry. And I got really embarrassed. And so finally, when I felt like I had a work bestie, I said,
Yes.
"Do I sound like a Kardashian? I feel like I sound so stupid
Right.
in these meetings with this American accent." And she said, "No, you speak so clearly.
So
You speak so
clearly.
confidently. You enunciate words. We just mumble." And it was like, "Oh, okay." It's a little bit in my head then. I was a little bit self-conscious.
No, yeah, me too.
It's a funny
Totally.
thing.
I just a lot of people like, "I really love your accent. I really love hearing you talk. I just got a lot of that." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
because I feel
Yeah.
like, what do I sound like to you? Because you don't wanna know what you sound like to me."
Yeah, and a lot of people asking if I was Canadian because in Hawaii, we
Yes.
do speak a little more slowly. There's a little bit of a lilt
Mm,
to our voice. It sounds friendly. So I said, "Oh, you
yeah,
think I'm Canadian? That's great. No,
great,
from Hawaii, but
right.
I'm yeah, no, I'll take that as a compliment
Everybody
too."
thought it, and I would even ask them, I'm like, "Did you really think I was Canadian?" They're like, "No, but we feel like it's rude to ask if you're US." Okay, thanks. We don't wanna piss you off, they're very,
Yeah.
no confrontation.
Yes. Yes. Totally.
So, anyway, thanks so much for joining us today, Tara. I won't take up all of your time, but thanks so much for sharing your story. And guys, like, this is poster child for how to land a job, how to move to New Zealand. And if you have any questions, put it in the chat. If you are in New Zealand and want to have a chat and your experience, I'd love to do that too. This is so great.
Yes.
I have not talked to her.
Especially all the single girls. All
Yes,
the
all the
single
single girls. I
girls.
get so many
If
in my community, like, "Can you help me?" And it's just
Yes.
not an area I relate to, right?
If you're hanging
Sending
out
them your
back
way.
in the US or whatever country you're in watching this from and you're going, "I don't know," do it. Do
There it
it. If
is.
you're ready for a new life adventure and you feel like you're kind of doing the same thing, and maybe you love where you're from. I love Hawaii. Hawaii will always be home to me. But
Mm,
at the same time, I just felt like there was another adventure I was meant to have. And maybe someday I'll end up back in Hawaii. I mean, I've got a partner here who loves Hawaii. It was an easy
there you
sell,
go.
right?
That's an easy sell. Right, that works
Yeah.
out.
So, single girls, if you're thinking about this, do it. It'll be
Right.
great.
It doesn't mean that you leaving your country because you hate it. Maybe it doesn't, just for a time you want an adventure, that doesn't mean anything. You have the privilege now of being a permanent resident in New Zealand and in the US. That's a gift.
It's the best. It's the best of both. It truly is a gift. It's a
It's a gift.
gift. I
It
mean,
is.
how many times in your life or in anyone's normal lives do you get this opportunity to live and work and be in another country for the rest of your life if you choose to? I mean, if you get that work visa, do it. If you don't like it, you can always go home.
Right. Just have an experience, travel around, you're gonna like it. I mean, literally, like, who doesn't like New Zealand? It's pretty great.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway.
Except the Whole Foods. I wish we could have a Whole Foods.
Oh, girl, I know. Like, when I came back and
A
I could
Target.
order at 10 p.m. at night and have it on my doorstep in the morning, it was like jumping around. Like, are you kidding me? I can get anything off of this app?
Yeah, you will survive without Amazon. You will survive.
Oh, yeah. I was used to it. It didn't bother me until you're like, "Whoa," just appreciating it. You just
Yep.
appreciate what I do miss is, like, the grocery stores in New Zealand where I could just buy everything and it's all organic, and I don't have to worry about it. Here, it's like a huge job trying to figure out what doesn't have the stupid dye in it and GMO, it's just
Yep.
organic. Everybody's saying it's organic, it's not, like, you have to,
Yep.
like, pay attention, and because 'cause I'm trying not to revert back, my kids want all the sugar cereals, and you're like, "Oh my
Oh
god."
gosh. I know. I will, and that's the other thing, right? When I go back to the US and have a Starbucks, it's like I have to ask for half of one pump
Mm.
or the sugar shock is wild. I had no idea how much sugar we eat
Oh,
in the
it's
US.
terrible. No, I know. It's terrible. I go and a couple of the coffee shops, I'll say, can I make a flat white? And then I get it. And it's like this big and everybody in the whole place looks at me like, what is that? What
I
did you
know.
just pay $5 for?
I
I
know.
paid for coffee, not a ton of milk. That's what I bought.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't need this much milk.
I know. Or a caramel ribbon or walls or whatever the
Yeah.
heck. I don't know.
Oh, I know they're good, but yeah, I don't like
We
them.
could go on
I
and
just
on
give you my 2
forever.
cents, seriously. And then you drink or you get this huge thing and it's like, it has 1 shot in this huge cup. No,
Yes.
the coffee
Yeah,
is
you'll love
terrible,
you I mean, if you're a coffee person, at least the coffee here will be great. That's the
at least,
one thing I can promise, at the
promise.
very least.
At the very least, it's unbelievable. Will ruin you, and I'm very unhappy with everything here. That's why I have my own espresso maker and very, very
Yes, do it at
specific.
home. Yep.
And I try not to turn it on too early with my kids, like, you know,
Yeah. Mama
so
needs her
loud.
cup. Get
Yeah,
up.
I need it. I just need the 2 shots. I'm good. I don't need more than that. I'm just like, yeah, I did well in Europe. They just have these little
Uh,
machines. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for joining us. Please put your comments below. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And if you have any
Yep,
questions for Tara, so fun. I mean, I think that we're just going to be besties. I'm just deciding
I
now
think so.
because I think
Yep,
so.
we will be.
Because
Thank you.
we have the same name and I really like you. And that's why.
Oh, awesome. Perfect. Me too. Ditto.
Yeah, so good.
Ditto,
So,
sis.
yeah, so maybe this won't be the last time that we do this.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, yeah, that was really great. Thanks so much for sharing it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no
All right, I'll see
problem.
you.